It started with a simple request. A request that seemed innocent enough at first, but would soon unravel my entire world. "We need you to drop out of college," my father had said. His voice was tinged with guilt, but also a quiet desperation. "It's only temporary, son. You'll finish your degree later." "But Emma needs this. We can't let her dreams die because of money." I remember that moment as though it were etched into my mind. The sharpness of his words, the pain behind them, the pleading look in my mother's eyes. She had always been the one to push me forward, to remind me of my potential. And now here she was, silent and waiting for me to make the decision. I'd been the reliable one, the one they could always count on. I had never let them down before. But this time, everything felt different. I was torn. Emma was my sister, my flesh and blood, the person I'd shared countless memories with. Her smile, her laughter, her dreams, they were part of who I was. How could I deny her this opportunity? Law school. It was everything she had ever wanted. And in that moment, the weight of my parents' plea pushed me to make a decision I would regret for the rest of my life. I dropped out. I left behind my dreams, my aspirations, and the life I had built for myself. I took a job at an office, doing menial tasks that barely paid the bills, but every cent I earned toward Emma's education. She had always been the golden child, the one with the potential, the future. And I, her older brother, was the one who would ensure that future came to fruition. At first, everything felt noble. I believed in the sacrifice. I believed it was for a greater cause, for her dreams, for the betterment of our family. There was a sense of pride in knowing that I was the one who was holding everything together. Every night after work, I would sit at my desk, head bent low, poring over bills and school fees, knowing that with every sacrifice I was contributing to her success. But slowly, something changed. The first signs were subtle. The late nights at the library, the phone calls I wasn't allowed to hear, the distracted look in Emma's eyes when we spoke. I began to notice the distance between us, the space that seemed to grow wider with each passing day. It was as if she was slipping away from me, and I couldn't understand why. Was she stressed about school? Was she overwhelmed with everything? I tried to comfort her, tried to offer support, but every attempt felt like I was pushing against a wall. One evening, I came home early from work. It was a rare occurrence, but I needed a break. I needed to feel like I still had control over something in my life. I opened the door to find Emma talking on the phone, her voice lowered to a hushed whisper, as if she was hiding something. Her face flushed when she saw me, and she quickly ended the call. But the damage had already been done. I saw the fear in her eyes, the way she quickly tried to cover her tracks. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to sound casual, but my heart was pounding in my chest. I could feel it, the tension, the lie hanging between us. "Yeah," she replied, her voice shaky. "Just school stuff. You know how it is." I nodded, but something in my gut told me she wasn't telling the truth. The nagging feeling grew with each passing day, gnawing at me, until it became unbearable. I couldn't shake the thought that she was hiding something from me, something big, and I hated myself for it. I had trusted her. I had believed in her. But now all I could feel was doubt, a growing suspicion that something wasn't right. And then, one night, I followed her. It wasn't planned, but the urge to know the truth overwhelmed me. I had to see for myself. I had to know what was going on behind my back. I followed her to a cafe on the outskirts of town. I stood across the street, watching as she entered, and it was then that I saw him. A man in his 40s, dressed in a tailored suit, leaning against the door, waiting for her. My heart stopped. It wasn't the man himself, but the familiarity of his presence. I knew him. He was a family friend, someone I had seen around my house during holidays, someone I thought I could trust. But seeing them together, something inside me snapped. I watched them closely, their conversation low and intimate. At first, I couldn't understand what was happening. But then, I saw it. The way he handed her an envelope, the way she smiled at him with something I had never seen before. A smile that wasn't for me, not the kind of smile she used to share with me when we were younger, when we were happy. I wanted to confront her right then and there, but I couldn't. I stood frozen, watching her leave the cafe with him, laughing as if nothing had changed, as if everything was fine. The betrayal hit me like a tidal wave, knocking me off my feet. All the sacrifices I had made, all the nights spent working hard to provide for her, everything felt like it meant nothing. That night, I stayed up late, replaying the scene over and over in my mind. My heart ached, my mind racing. How could she do this to me? How could she betray me like this? She was supposed to be my sister, my blood, my family. How could she use me, use my sacrifices to live a life that wasn't hers to take? The next morning, I confronted her. My voice trembled with anger, with hurt, with disbelief. What was that last night? I asked, my words sharp and cutting. What was that man doing with you? She froze, her eyes widening. I don't know what you mean, she stammered, but I could see the lie in her eyes. Don't lie to me, Emma, I said, the pain in my voice unmistakable. I saw everything. You've been using me, haven't you? Her face turned pale, her lips trembling. For a moment, she said nothing. And then, finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry, she said, her words barely reaching my ears. But I had to do this. I had to make sure I got ahead. You don't understand. You wouldn't understand. Her words stung and I felt a sickening realization wash over me. She wasn't just using me for money. She was using me to create a life for herself, a life that had no room for me. And the worst part, my parents knew. They knew all along. They had known about her secret meetings with him. They had known about the money he was giving her, the things she was doing behind my back. And they had let me continue believing I was helping her, believing that I was supporting her dream. The betrayal wasn't just from Emma, it was from my parents too. They had used me. They had manipulated me into thinking I was doing the right thing, when all along they had been covering up her lies. The weight of it all pressed down on me, suffocating me, until I couldn't breathe. I felt like a fool. A puppet, controlled by the strings of their expectations. I didn't speak to them. I didn't speak to Emma. I couldn't. The trust had been shattered, an idea how to rebuild it. But one thing was clear. I couldn't stay in this life anymore. I couldn't keep sacrificing myself for people who didn't appreciate me. I had to leave. I packed my things, leaving the house without a word. I needed to be alone, to figure out what came next. The anger still burned in my chest, but there was something else growing inside me. Something darker, something more powerful. It was the seed of revenge. I didn't know how, but I knew I couldn't let them get away with it. I couldn't let Emma or my parents walk away unscathed. They had destroyed me, and now it was time for me to take back control. But even as I made that decision, a heavy sadness lingered in my heart. This wasn't the person I wanted to be. This wasn't the path I wanted to walk. But sometimes, revenge is the only way to reclaim what's been taken from you. I never felt so empty. The weight of betrayal was like a suffocating fog, creeping into every corner of my mind, clouding my thoughts and drowning any hope of clarity. The house felt like a prison. My parents' home, once a sanctuary of warmth and love, now seemed like a cold, distant place where nothing was as it seemed. I had given everything for Emma, the hours, the sacrifices, the dreams I abandoned for hers. But now everything felt like a lie. The love, the trust, the years of devotion, it was all meaningless. The truth gnawed at me relentlessly. Emma had lied, yes, but she was not the only one. My parents had known about the man, about the money, and they had let me waste my time, my energy, and my future. They hadn't told me. They had let me carry the burden alone, expecting nothing in return. My mother, who had always been my rock, and my father, who had taught me about loyalty and family, had kept this from me. They had let me drown, thinking I was helping. The anger was there, of course, but beneath it, there was something much deeper, something darker. I felt betrayed by the people who should have been my allies, my protectors, my own flesh and blood. The foundation of everything I believed in had crumbled beneath my feet, leaving me standing in a broken world where nothing was certain anymore. I walked aimlessly for hours, trying to escape the whirlwind of emotions inside me. The streets blurred as I moved through them. The noise of the city, the chatter of people, all drowned out by the roar of my thoughts. The anger was still there festering, but it was joined by something else, sorrow. The kind of sorrow that only comes when you realize that the people you love most are capable of hurting you in ways you never imagined. I found myself standing outside the cafe where I had seen Emma and that man together. The memory was still so vivid, so fresh in my mind. I could almost hear their laughter, the way he had handed her that envelope, an envelope that should have been for me. I had given up so much for her, and this was how she repaid me. This was how my family repaid me. I sat on the cold, stone bench outside, my hands trembling as I tried to calm my breathing. I closed my eyes, and for a moment I was transported back in time. Back to when Emma and I were children, before everything had gotten so complicated. I remembered the days we spent running through the fields behind our house, the sun warm on our faces, the air thick with the smell of freshly cut grass. We would race each other, laughing as we tripped and fell, never caring about anything other than the joy of being together. Emma had always been the smarter one, the more driven one. She had big dreams, dreams that filled her eyes with light. I had always believed in those dreams. I had always been her biggest supporter. But now, as I sat there on that bench, I couldn't reconcile that image of my little sister with the woman I had seen the night before, the woman who had manipulated me for her own gain. The grief hit me like a ton of bricks. It wasn't just that she had used me, it was that I had failed her. I'd been so blind, so trusting. I had given her everything, and in return, she had taken it all without a second thought. My heart broke at the thought that maybe I hadn't been enough. Maybe, despite everything, I hadn't been the brother she needed. But even through the sorrow, I couldn't ignore the rage that simmered beneath the surface. It was the kind of rage that kept you awake at night, gnawing at your soul, demanding justice. I had been wronged, and I would make sure that Emma and my parents paid for it. I stood up from the bench, the cold air biting at my skin, and made my way back home. I couldn't run from this anymore. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when the truth was staring me in the face. I had been betrayed, and now it was time to make them pay. But even as I made that decision, a part of me hesitated. Was this really who I wanted to become? A person consumed by anger and revenge? A part of me still loved Emma, still wanted to believe that she was the girl I had grown up with, the sister who had once looked up to me. But that girl was gone. She had been replaced by someone who used me, someone who had broken me. I couldn't let that go. I spent the next few days in a haze, my mind spinning with thoughts of revenge. I knew I had to do something that would make Emma and my parents understand the consequences of their actions. But as the days passed, I realized that it wasn't enough to just hurt them back. I needed something more. I needed to make them feel the weight of their betrayal, to make them understand the depth of the pain they had caused me. And then it hit me. I couldn't just confront Emma and my parents. I had to expose them. I had to show the world what they had done. I had to make sure that no one would ever see them the same way again. I needed to use the truth, their own secrets, to destroy everything they had worked for. The plan started to take shape in my mind. It wasn't going to be easy, it wasn't going to be quick, but it would be perfect. And when it was all over, they would understand what it felt like to have everything ripped away. I began gathering information, digging into every corner of their lives. I started with Emma. I knew about the man, of course, but there were so many more pieces to uncover. I wasn't just going to expose her betrayal. I was going to expose everything. Every secret she had kept from me. Every lie she had told. But it wasn't just Emma. I had to dig into my parents' lives too. I had to find the truth about why they had kept this from me, why they had let me fall into this trap. I wasn't going to stop until I had every last detail, every last piece of the puzzle. The more I dug, the more the pieces fell into place. I discovered things I never could have imagined. Things that twisted my stomach and made my heart race. My parents had known about Emma's dealings with that man long before I did. They had even encouraged it. They had let me play the fool, all while they watched from the sidelines. The anger bubbled up inside me again, a violent wave of rage and betrayal. But the more I learned, the more my resolve grew. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice. It was about making them understand that no one could use me like this, that I would no longer be their pawn. And then the pivotal moment came. I found something, a piece of evidence that would tear them all apart. It was buried deep in my father's old files, hidden among documents I'd never thought to look at. It was a letter, a signed agreement between my parents and the man Emma had been meeting with. The letter detailed a financial arrangement that went beyond tuition. It was a deal, a partnership. My parents had sold me out to secure Emma's future, and they had done it in a way that left me out in the cold. I stood there, staring at the letter, my hands shaking. This was it, the final piece. The moment that would bring everything to light. But even as I held the letter in my hands, the weight of what I was about to do settled in. I wasn't just going to ruin their lives. I was going to destroy the very fabric of our family. And that thought broke my heart. I wasn't the person I used to be. And I wasn't sure if I ever could be again. But I had come too far to back down now. I folded the letter carefully, slipping it into my coat pocket, and walked out of the room. There was no turning back. The game was on, and when it was over, they would understand what it felt like to be betrayed. They would understand what it felt like to lose everything. But as I made my way down the hallway, my heart heavy with the weight of the decision, I couldn't shake the feeling that something inside me had died. I had chosen the path of vengeance, and with it, I had lost a part of myself I could never get back.